And we're live. Welcome, everybody. This is the Progress Texas Happy Hour. It's 12 o'clock on Fridays. That may as well be a good time for happy hour. This is as far as you know. Joining us today is Justice Gisela Triana, Judge Amy Clark Meachum, and State Representative Erin Zwiener, the freshman of the year in the Texas legislature. Maybe not officially, but as far as Progress Texas is concerned, she is. Thank you all for joining us.
Thanks for having us.
So nice. Yeah, thank you. And thank you for the promotion.
Yeah.
Freshman of the year.
Well, I want to start with the judges because we are in such a critical moment with judges right now. And, you know, I have some questions I want to ask you just about the campaign and about how things are going in your world, but I want to dive right in on the subject of justices. And we hear so much about it at the Supreme Court level. But this year in Texas, we have really heard a lot about the Texas Supreme Court, and that's the office that the both of you are running for. But you're currently judges at is it the district level?
Well, two different levels. So I am currently a district court judge here in Travis County and the presiding judge of all the civil and family courts here. And I actually served with Justice Triana for 8 years before. And then Justice Triana, I'll let you say where you currently serve.
And so I'm on the Third Court of Appeals. So as Justice, see, I already made you a Justice, Amy. As Judge Amy Clark Meachum said, I was on the district bench for 14 years, came up through JP, Municipal Court, County Court, and now I'm serving on the Appellate Court, which has 24 counties, but it sits in Travis County.
24 counties, which would be big in any other state, but it's a slice of the pie in Texas.
Yep.
And then Representative Zwiener coming in from Hays County.
Yes, I represent Hays and Blanco counties just southwest of Austin. I am running for re-election. I'm one of the 12 flippers from 2018. I was what we call an election night surprise. A lot of folks didn't think we could do it until we had done it. Now I'm hoping to get myself back to the Texas Capitol and also get 9 more friends so that we can have a Democratic majority in the Texas House.
Well, you know that election night surprise you mentioned is kind of the way it always goes in Texas, isn't it? That no one really thinks we can do it until we've done it. And the fact that this state has been changing so quickly, well, steadily, I should say, more so than quickly, but steadily over the past decade, that's really helps not only elect good judges at the local and district level, but help flip seats in the legislature. And Representative Zwiener, better to be a flipper than a flip-flopper. We'll talk more about that later today. But I want to bring it back to the court because I think that a lot of the issues that the court is dealing with are issues that the legislature has and will deal with. So, Judge Meachum and Justice Triana, you're both running for the Supreme Court. Can you tell me about what has motivated you and what you have seen from the Supreme Court just in the past few months that is a perfect example of the problems we're dealing with right now?
Yeah, sure. So I'll take a step back. I want to say one thing, Ed. I want to make sure people know, because these are sometimes low-profile races. Mm-hmm. She brought up the U.S. Supreme Court. My name is Judge Amy Clark Meachum. I do not be confused with Judge Amy Coney Barrett. And I just want to be very clear. I know she's gotten a lot of press this week, and there's a lot of press about her. But I want to be very clear. I'm the Democratic nominee for Chief Justice of the Texas Supreme Court. And I don't want there to be ballot confusion. So maybe I do, but not from our team. And so I just wanted to make that clear from the outset. So first off, I want to say that this is a court that has been all Republican, exclusively Republican for 22 years. And that has resulted in very one-sided rulings for over 2 decades now in the types of cases they take, in the way they rule. And I am running, and I think the other 3 candidates who are running for 4 seats on a 9-member court, we are running to restore fairness and balance to a currently monolithic court. And it is time for a new generation of judicial thought leaders to do so. As to what you're referring to, in the time of the pandemic, especially as the representative will know, when the legislature is not even in session and the governor has declared a state of disaster, the Supreme Court has been involved in all of the big issues of the day, especially on voting issues. Originally ruling back in May, a confusing ruling. It could have helped to have a clear ruling, a clarifying ruling, but instead they added confusion to people's rights to vote. And they ruled back in May that not every voter would have the ability to claim a disability and to vote by mail. And they did so in a type of an opinion where they were denying a request for mandamus from the Attorney General Paxton, and they ruled anyway, and they wrote for pages and pages and pages and have really made confusion where clarity would have been better.
Yeah.
And everything we have seen since, all these voting cases since, I think one after another, the Republican Party has consistently been suing now Harris County for a matter of months. And I just think that has been a confusing situation for voters. But meanwhile, I think the county administrators, the county clerks, and the election administrators have done a Herculean effort, making it clear to people what the rules are and doing their best to make it accessible for people to exercise their right to vote.
Justice Triana?
And so I want to start off because Representative Zwiener and I both ran in 2018. And just like she was not supposed to win her race, neither was I. I ran for the Third Court of Appeals, a court which was made up of 6 Republicans, and 3 Democrats, and I came in and won when nobody thought that it was doable. And the reason I say that is that sometimes, people are still looking at us, well, you're just not going to win statewide in Texas, and it is totally doable. The excitement that's going on right now, Ed, you're talking, it is hard to sleep. Everybody is voting. The numbers are still high. It's an amazing thing. One of the reasons I'm running, the main reason is because our Supreme Court has become so politicized. They are putting politics over people. Judge Clark Meachum was talking about the voter by mail, which, they found that even though they had doctors that testified that, because we don't have immunity to COVID, that under the election code, that should be counted as a disability, as an illness or a sickness that would put us in harm's way in, being all together in a polling place. They decided that, nope, only that does not qualify COVID by itself, allowing us to vote by mail. Now, they did this by Zoom because they haven't met in the court since March 13th. All of their business has been done from the comfort of their house by Zoom. We cannot have jury trials till December 1st. And that's if they don't go ahead and change that. So even though they understand how dangerous it is to have people come to the courthouse, they're just fine with having people show up to the polling place. The other thing they did, which I just think is just cruel, they had originally very rightly put a moratorium to evictions and debt collecting. Everything shut down. I don't need to remind you, in March, we were all told to stay home, and they had prohibited debt collections and evictions. And then in May, when Governor Abbott decided it was time to open the economy, even though, we hadn't met any of the requirements or of the benchmarks that we were supposed to, they went online and they said, okay, we're opening up, so let's proceed with evictions, let's proceed with debt collection. And, at a time where we had over 1 million people who were jobless, who were, trying to get unemployment. And so in effect, we've had people with COVID who have been evicted from their homes. At a time where CDC is saying shelter in place, we have told people who are contagious, you have to get out of your house, and good luck finding somewhere, where you can stay. So it has been a very cruel Supreme Court, our Texas Supreme Court. We need to make sure that we bring balance. There are 9 Republicans there, seven of which, actually there's 8 because we have a vacancy right now. 7 of the 8 have been appointed either by Greg Abbott or by Rick Perry. And they understand, that their job is political in nature, and it shouldn't be that way. We need a fair and we need an independent court.
And I think these issues you bring up are so important, not only in our process, our democratic process here in the state, in the country, but also just in terms of how we treat each other, especially in a year like 2020 where we've learned a lot about that. And you brought up one important point, and I want to bring it to Erin here in a moment, because I know that Erin's worked on voting rights quite a bit, but the justices voted from home when they said it was good enough for them to vote from home, but it wasn't good enough for the voters to vote from home. And that just encapsulates so much in that one decision. And Erin, you worked on something like this in your first term in the legislature. I want to say it was mobile vote locations, where Republicans tried to take mobile vote locations away, and in fact did. And I think that there were other requirements that you worked with Gina Hinojosa. I think one is student ID as potential voter ID. But let you talk a little bit more about some of the voting rights work you did and how you're seeing that play out in 2020.
Yeah, there's a whole bunch of different election-related issues. The specific piece of legislation I filed was to allow students to use students at state universities to use their state university-issued photo IDs to vote. And it's because it creates a lot of confusion for them. A lot of students don't drive regularly, and so they don't routinely carry their driver's license around. Some of them don't have driver's licenses. And so they have a photo ID that has been issued by a state entity, and it's not accepted to vote. And for comparison here, your concealed carry license, if you have one, is an acceptable ID to vote, but the student ID is not. So we brought legislation for that. We got 60-something co-authors signed onto it and still couldn't get a hearing, which was incredibly frustrating. We also worked on this issue with mobile voting. And so mobile voting was this idea of setting up a location for generally a few days, maybe a week, instead of the full early voting period. And it's something that gets used in a lot of communities. It's been used to give smaller college campuses voting access. It's been used in rural communities when they don't really have enough space or funding to do 2 full early voting locations, to have one in the more rural area that's just there for a few days. In fact, Blanco County used to use that for the city of Blanco. And it was removed as in an attempt to try and reduce the overall number of voting locations that are opened for people in Texas. And like so many things, it really was designed to hurt young people. But it ended up also hurting rural Texans. I mean, in my district, that's where it hurt, is in Blanco County. They have managed to open the voting location in the city of Blanco for the full early voting period for the general, but they weren't able to do it for the primary. They weren't able to do it for the runoff. So that meant that everyone who lived in the city of Blanco had to drive 20 miles up the road to Johnson City if they wanted to vote early. So that's been quite frustrating. But the other huge voting access issue I want to bring up, well, there's 2. One is we need online voter registration. Now, I helped register hundreds of students at the end of the voting period. I also just helped register general community members. I was leaving my campaign manager's house and was holding the register to vote sign, and they went, "Oh, can you register me?" and registered her downstairs neighbor. These are all people that would have it done if it was a simple online form, but instead we make people print something out, send it in, or go to a physical office. And it's 2020, y'all. Most other states have online voter registration. It is secure. I've done it myself when I was in grad school in Arizona. There's no reason not to have online voter registration except to make it harder to register to vote. And using only paper forms interjects a bunch of errors because, not everyone has the best handwriting into the process. And it means our county election workers have to spend hours upon hours upon hours of time manually entering these forms right when they need to be doing the most amount of election prep. So online voter registration is a major step, and also offering same-day voter registration. I was at Texas State the other day and a student broke my heart because he said, "I still have time to get registered, right?" And I had to break the news to him that he had missed the deadline and wasn't going to be able to vote in this critical election. All of these things that just put arbitrary barriers in the way keep people from participating in our democracy who are eligible to vote and deserve access. And all I have to say is, if you are afraid of people voting, you are in the wrong business, because we are going to keep fighting to make sure everyone can exercise their constitutional rights.
And I have never seen a political party as afraid of the ballot box as the Republicans in 2020 are this year. But Erin, I want to bring up one of my favorite Erin Zwiener stories is you gave birth on the campaign trail in 2020. And I want to actually I want to open up and talk about all your campaigns at this point. Erin, you gave birth in 2020. And do I recall this correctly? Did you try to register was it an EMS or a paramedic or a nurse? something that
I didn't try to register anybody, but I did have a couple constituents tend to me at the hospital, and we definitely talked about the campaign. No, I mean, it was a little bit wild. I filed for office in November or December when I was slightly pregnant, had my primary in March, had a runoff in May, had my baby at the end of June, and then, of course, was on the ballot in November. And the story most people like to tell, Ed, that maybe you're thinking of is after I got my epidural, I went, oh, my brain's clear. I got to send a fundraising email. And did. I mean, it was 2 days before the fundraising deadline. So we had to do what we had to do. But no, I mean, it was actually really tremendous to have her along the way because, being on the campaign trail is tiring. It's hard. Yeah. It's hard to come up and keep doing that work every single day, especially when you're in an uphill fight and when not a lot of other folks believe in your race. And what kept me moving was looking at my daughter and thinking about what I wanted for her future. And thinking about that's the future that so many Texans want for their children, and that we have the power to give if we can build some sustainable progressive power in Texas.
Well, let me talk about your campaigns here. And I want to start with Justice Triana, and then we'll go to Judge Meachum and back to Representative Zwiener. All of you have run for office before. How is your campaign different in 2020 than it was in 2018? And in this pandemic, one of the things we like to ask folks is, what's keeping you grounded? What's helping you kind of find some balance throughout all of this? And that's probably something you normally need to find in the space of a campaign anyway. But let's just throw in a pandemic to keep it interesting. How has that changed things for you, and how are you handling it all?
Well, this is probably my 6th election. And so it is definitely different than anything I've done before. I will tell you, the primary happened on the 3rd, the state shut down on the 13th. And from January through March, I didn't see my family a whole lot. I've got 5 kids, 2 of them still at home. And, and I had my 17-year-old who was like, Mom, when are we going to see you again? Those were the famous last words he said, because after the 13th, we've all been at home 24/7. And so he, I think, would be probably a little bit better if I wasn't at home so much. So it's a totally new, different game. So we, running statewide, I thought 24 counties was crazy because we go all the way to St. Angela right now. But, the primary, right before the primary, we were 1 minute we'd be in Houston. The next minute I'd be in El Paso, Dallas, McAllen. So it was grueling, physically grueling. We have the silver lining to COVID, if there's a silver lining, is that we do a lot of what we're doing right now. We do a lot of Zoom. And so, last night we were in a progressive Hispanic Democrats meeting. And then we were down in, San Antonio. When I say down, we were on Zoom to, a Bexar County bar meeting. And so sometimes we have 3 to 4 Zooms a day. So that has been very helpful. It's tiring in a different way. I've got 3 kids at home with 3 dogs. And so invariably, I'll be on a Zoom call or, I was actually teaching a continuing legal education the other day. And, here comes my son down the stairs in a muscle shirt, and he has no business wearing one. But you're like, can you get out of the frame? So, it makes for crazy stories. We're seeing a lot of each other. Our, patience has grown a little bit thin with each other. But at the same time, I think like everybody else, I'm blessed to be able to be with my family as opposed to, being all the way in El Paso tonight. So it's been very different. I think the hardest part has been the fundraising, because it is hard to ask, people want to see you. So I'm going to let Judge Amy Clark Meachum put in her 2 cents, because we see each other every day on Zoom, at least once.
Yes. Well, it's a lot of each other on Zoom. I was just echo that, right? Which is, it's been challenging, but there are parts of it that have been very grounding because we don't leave our home. I mean, here's what's going on at the Meachum house. I'm running a courthouse. I'm the presiding judge of trial court, civil and family courts in Travis County. I don't leave my house to hold court. I'm mostly only unless there's an emergency. we're running a statewide campaign. We have 3 kids in virtual school, and we're running and my husband has his full-time job as well. So it is wild, but it has been a lot of seeing more people, seeing my family a lot more than I anticipated, because until recently, I was telling Suffolk before we started that now there's a little more campaigning happening outside. The weather has gotten better and you can wear masks and socially distance. But for 6 months or so, it was only Zoom and it was only virtual. I will say one thing, I'm gonna make one plug, because it is important to get out there. It's definitely important to meet constituents and meet voters and meet people and voters all across the state. Let me make one pitch, since we have 3 working moms here though. I would like Democratic voters to think about the 254 counties in Texas and who we want in office. And I want us to be kinder to our working mothers. If we want working mothers to run for office, if we want working fathers to run for office and still be the type of parents and humans we want in office, we need to give them a little bit of a break, because it is very hard, like Justice Triana, like my good friend Gisela was saying, to travel to 254 counties. I know Beto did it, and he did it with a lot of help from his Amy at home helping with the kids. But I want to put in a pitch for our party to really understand how difficult it is to travel to 254 counties, and that we are going to limit a lot of people from running statewide for office in a trending purple state. If that is the unreal expectation, I think we put on our candidates. So Representative Zwiener may want to run statewide someday, and we may want these people to run, but we need to make sure we help them do it, and we don't put barriers to doing it as a party, I think.
Representative Zwiener, how's your campaign different in 2020 compared to 18? And aren't you fortunate that you only have however many counties you have?
Yes.
Yeah, I have a pretty large district for a Democrat in Texas, but nothing like the entire state. So Judge Meachum, Justice Triana, my hat is off to y'all for the courage and the gumption to campaign across all 254. A lot has changed. My family at the beginning of the pandemic had a pretty big personal change. I'm in my 30s. My husband just turned 30. We have a 2-year-old daughter. We were very low risk, and we knew that. But my grandmother before the pandemic had been in the hospital and then in a rehab facility, and she has dementia, really couldn't live home alone, and really was quite sick. We didn't know if we were on the edge of her entering hospice. And it became this question of, what are we doing? And we looked up and we just went, we as a family have the ability to take her in. We can't let her go to a nursing facility right now, knowing that visitation is closing, and that we as a family really might not see her again. So we brought my 92-year-old grandmother to live with me in April, and it was pretty intense, a lot of medical care. And then midway through, she had a surgery that was incredibly successful, was recovered quite well, and actually moved back home a couple weeks ago, just in time for her 93rd birthday. But it was a really big shift for us, because it went from us being low risk to us having a very high risk person in our house, and us having to take every possible precaution we could think of, just because knowing she wouldn't survive if she got sick. And so it definitely changed a lot about campaigning. And of course, this has changed in various levels for everyone. But I mean, my campaign in 2018 had almost no money and ran mostly off volunteer power, knocking on doors. And losing the ability to knock on doors has been hard, losing the ability to talk to folks at their front door. So what we've decided to do is we are lit dropping. So we leave stuff at folks' doors, but we don't knock. Sometimes we get lucky and we meet people in their front yards, which is always fantastic. Yeah. And then the other big change, and this kind of ties in to what Judge Meachum was talking about with being a working parent. I feel so lucky in my daughter, because she likes to be out and meet people. She still runs around our house, knocks on the doors and goes, knock doors. Are we going to knock doors? I'm like, not today. Or I don't know when we're going to do that again. But having a toddler, she does not understand hygiene. She does not know how to social distance. She thinks that the way you greet somebody is to shove your hand in their mouth. And I mean, I feel like my daughter's a little disease vector. And so it's really changed her life. And it's meant that things that I would do on the campaign trail, where I would bring her, like lit dropping or block walking, and we used to pull her on in a wagon, just aren't an option anymore. And so it's really kind of changed our childcare dynamic and trying to figure out those pieces in a little bit of a different way. I'm glad we're finding ways to connect with folks, but it's definitely different. It's definitely different. It's a lot more time on the phones and a lot less time on the streets.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely, as you've all mentioned, it's a different year, it's a different kind of campaign. Not only are we waiting on a COVID-19 vaccine, but I've heard some people say that they're about ready for Zoom vaccines. So we'll see how realistic that is after 2020. We only have a few minutes left. So what I want to do is go around the horn one more time and let you all do a plug for yourselves, give your website address, and talk about your race one more time. Why don't we start with Judge Meachum, and then we'll go to Justice Triana, and we'll wrap up with State Representative Zwiener. And if there's anything else you want to add as well, feel free to go ahead and do that too.
Well, thank you so much. You can find more about me at amymeachum.com, as well as on Facebook and Instagram. And I'm trying to be better about doing my social media posting and making it interesting during these weeks of early voting. I would just say again that this is the best chance we've had in 25 years, I think, to win statewide. And it is important that everyone votes all the way down their ballots. These races are incredibly important. With what is happening at the federal level, I think we have seen that this president has changed the federal benches for a generation. And so state courts really are going to be essential moving forward for fundamental things that liberals care about, fundamental rights, civil liberties, moving our country forward, not backward into the 1950s. State courts are going to be who holds the line. And so I want people to think about that when they get to the polling booth and make sure they vote all the way down the ballot. Thank you so much for having me here today, Ed.
Thanks for joining us.
I'm Justice Gisela Triana, running for the Supreme Court. A couple of things. First of all, my website is judgetriana.com, so you can get whatever information you need from there. Please go to Facebook and like my page, Judge Triana. If you can donate money, that would be great. We're doing our last push to make sure my campaign is trying to focus on South Texas. As the only Latina who is running statewide, I want to make sure that people are excited about our statewide races and make sure that they go out to vote. Cannot tell you enough. Make sure you go all the way down the ballot. Do not stop at the top. I know we are so excited to take back our White House, but we need to take back our state house and our courthouses. This Supreme Court, our Texas Supreme Court, is going to be in charge of redistricting in the sense of any plan that the legislature comes out with. Even if we flip the 9 seats and we give Representative Zwiener, a good seat at the table in redistricting, whatever comes out, it's going to be challenged and it's going to end up in the Supreme Court. And so my question is, do you want 9 Republicans deciding what those maps look like? School finance, which is dear to my heart, gets decided in the Supreme Court. And, I don't have to remind people that last time it went up there, even though they agreed that the legislature was not funding public schools in the manner that it needed to under the Constitution to make sure that it was a free and efficient system, they just kind of shrugged their responsibility and said, well, but we're going to let the legislature figure that out. Yeah. So these are issues that are important to all of us. We need to make sure that we take our courts back. So please go up and down and don't leave any Democrat behind.
That's right. The next time you think of underfunded schools in Texas, you can thank a Republican judge for it.
Yes.
Erin, you want to bring us home?
You might be able to thank a few Republican legislators as well, but hopefully we won't have too many of those left. So the Texas House is one of the most important bodies nationwide. As Justice Triana mentioned, we are going to be redrawing district lines. I really wanted to win in 2018, but the year I knew was critical was 2020, because in 2021, we draw those maps. And so many of the gains we've made are because enough time has passed since the last redistricting that the gerrymander broke. So please help us get a fair seat. or get a seat at the table to have a fair shot at drawing maps that are fair to the people of Texas instead of designed to only benefit one party. The other plug I'll make is the moment we get a majority in the Texas House, all of the bills that target specific groups of Texans in cynical ways for Republican primary election votes, bills that attack LGBTQ people, bills that attack reproductive health care, bills that attack people of color, bills that attack immigrants. Those stop the moment we have a Democratic Speaker of the Texas House. The Senate can still talk about them, but the House will not move them. And so that is the point we need to reach. We need to quit having this divisive politics that targets specific communities of Texas play out in our legislature. And the way to do that is to flip the Texas House. We have a real shot. Got to protect my seat. I'm one of the 3 most targeted incumbents. And you can sign up to volunteer at erinforyall.com/volunteer. Got phone bank opportunities if you want to do remote. And then we have in-person contact with slit drops. So I hope you'll sign up. If you don't help me, help somebody. Leave it all on the field. Don't wake up with any regrets on November 4th.
Well said. And there's one last thing I want to bring up about Erin's tenure in the House last time around. You know, the Democratic House will stop bad legislation, but because Democrats like Erin got elected in 2018, they still were able to stop some pretty bad legislation in 2019, such as the voter suppression bill that tried to get pushed. And a bunch of bad anti-abortion bills never saw the light of day in 2019 because it just didn't have the support. It's because of representatives like you, Erin Zwiener. Thank you very much. And to all of you, such a group of accomplished and inspiring progressive women, I thank you for joining us and spending some time with us and sharing your words with our audience. And I hope together we can get across the finish line on November 3rd. And with values and work ethic like y'all's, I'm sure we will. So thank you very much, and hope to talk to you again soon.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks, Ed.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.